Welcome to the BioPharma Business Intelligence Unit, where symbolic integrity meets strategic clarity. At BBIU, we go beyond the headlines to decode the structural forces behind global biopharma, AI, and economic realignment. If you value precision, verification, and symbolic depth, this channel is for you. Subscribe now to access our weekly briefings, dossiers, and intelligence reports, and consider joining our institutional tier to unlock early warning systems, custom metrics, and exclusive strategic insight. You're not just listening, you're entering the future of epistemic intelligence. www.biopharmabusinessintelligenceunit.com.
Trump's pharmaceutical advertising crackdown, full picture and patient implications. President Trump has signed a memorandum directing HHS and the FDA to crack down on direct-to-consumer drug advertising. The order requires that ads present truthful, non-misleading information with explicit disclosure of side effects, and closes loopholes like the 1997 adequate provision rule that allowed risks to be buried in fine print or external links. The FDA is preparing about 100 cease-and-desist letters and thousands of warnings to pharmaceutical firms. This represents a structural reversal after decades of deregulation that fueled a $5 billion TV ad market in 2024. The measure threatens the marketing model of big pharma and destabilizes media outlets reliant on drug ad revenue. Legal challenges are certain, given First Amendment protections for commercial speech, but even partial enforcement could shift industry behavior. From the patient's perspective, the policy is corrective. Drug advertising has long magnified benefits while minimizing risks, leaving consumers unable to interpret inserts or weigh medical probabilities. By making risk disclosure central, the order rebalances information asymmetry in favor of patients, even if it comes with collateral costs to media and pharma. BBIU Opinion Historical Context. For most of the 20th century, pharmaceutical advertising in the United States was directed at physicians, not patients. Promotional budgets flowed into medical journals, congresses, and detailing visits. Patients were shielded by a regulatory wall. Medicines were not treated like consumer products. That barrier collapsed in 1997 when the FDA introduced the adequate provision rule. This loophole allowed companies to run 30-second TV spots that showcased benefits through images of vitality and well-being, while relegating side effects to microtext, fast-read disclaimers, or a website link. What had once been restricted became mainstream. The slow erosion of integrity. Inside pharma companies, the shift was not immediate. Medical affairs and regulatory affairs initially tried to enforce scientific rigor, flagging incomplete risk disclosures or exaggerated claims. But the commercial imperative was overwhelming. Marketing and sales held the budgets and controlled the P&L. Their mandate was growth, not restraint. Medical affairs, instead of acting as a hard filter, was progressively reduced to a compliance checklist. Regulatory affairs had veto power only in moments of crisis, not in daily promotional strategy. Over time, the ethical filter vanished. The process designed to protect patients from distorted information was absorbed into the commercial machinery. The result, an advertising ecosystem where persuasion dominated and patients were the most vulnerable actors. Why Trump's measure matters. The current executive order does not ban drug advertising, but it strikes at the structural imbalance created by decades of captured oversight. By requiring prominent disclosure of risks, closing the 1997 loophole, and launching mass enforcement through cease-and-desist letters, it restores, at least partially, the ethical filter that industry itself dismantled. From the patient's perspective, this is not about politics. It is about survival in a system where the average consumer cannot decode a medical insert. The average patient is persuaded by images of benefits and emotionally charged narratives. The prescriber is pressured by patient demand shaped by television rather than clinical evidence. Additional structural dimensions. Clinical impact of advertising. Direct-to-consumer advertising did not simply raise awareness. It reshaped prescribing patterns. Randomized trials and observational studies show that patients requesting a drug after seeing a TV ad are significantly more likely to receive it, even when alternatives exist. This has fueled unnecessary prescriptions, higher use of branded over generic drugs, and a measurable rise in polypharmacy. Safety signals have emerged faster in heavily advertised products, suggesting that marketing pressure contributed to broader and sometimes riskier use. Economic distortion. The spending curve is stark, from $220 million on TV in 1996 to over $6 billion annually by the late 2010s. That money does not come from nowhere. It is embedded in drug prices and passed on to insurers, Medicare, and patients. A systemic estimate shows that heavily advertised drugs represent a disproportionate share of Medicare spending. In other words, advertising is not a marginal cost. It is a driver of U.S. healthcare inflation. Trump's crackdown, even if partial, targets not only the message, but the economic engine behind rising drug costs. Future scenarios. Legal battles. Pharma will invoke the First Amendment. If courts side with industry, FDA authority could be weakened. Digital migration. Even with tighter TV rules, companies will pivot to social media, influencers, and targeted ads, where regulation is looser and harder to enforce. The risk is that manipulation becomes more individualized and less visible. Political sustainability. Trump's move is both corrective and tactical. Its long-term survival depends on whether regulators institutionalize these standards or whether they collapse with a change in administration. BBIU judgment Pharma built its marketing empire by exploiting a regulatory gap and weakening its own scientific safeguards. The state is now filling the vacuum. Trump's measure is politically opportunistic and will face legal battles, but structurally it is necessary. Medicines are not sneakers or soft drinks. They are interventions with life and death consequences. Allowing them to be sold through distorted advertising was always a deviation. Correcting it, even partially, is a defense of consumer integrity that medical affairs should have guaranteed from the beginning.